Drop a comment below and let me know. Maybe we can all learn something from each other's mistakes. Because at the end of the day, that's really all we can do. Learn, share what we've learned, and try to help each other make better decisions. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps somebody out there avoid the nightmare I put myself through. And remember, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Even when smart people are telling you it's not. Because I think there are a lot of people out there right now who are exactly where I was back in 2019. People who are hearing about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and thinking it might be their ticket to a better life. Maybe it is. I'm not here to tell you that cryptocurrency is inherently evil or that everyone who invests in it is doomed to fail. Some people do make money. Some people do get rich. But I am here to tell you that it's not magic. It's not a shortcut. And it's definitely not a guaranteed path to wealth. If you're thinking about getting into crypto trading, please learn from my mistakes. Don't invest money you can't afford to lose. Don't use leverage until you really understand what it means. Don't let greed cloud your judgment. And most importantly, don't let anyone, including me, make financial decisions for you. Do your own research. Understand the risks. Have a plan for what you'll do if things go wrong. Because things can go wrong. They went wrong for me, and I was absolutely convinced that I knew what I was doing. Your financial future is too important to gamble with. Trust me on that one. I spent years learning that lesson the hard way, so you don't have to. The funny thing is, I'm actually happier now than I was when I thought I was getting rich. Not because I enjoy being broke, obviously, but because I'm not constantly stressed about money anymore. I'm not checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if I've made or lost thousands of dollars. I'm not lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering if I should sell or hold or buy more. My life is boring now, and boring is actually pretty great. What do you think? Have you ever been tempted to make a big financial bet on something that seemed like a sure thing? Have you ever had to learn an expensive lesson about money and investing? Most importantly, I learned that there's no such thing as a shortcut to wealth. Not really. The people who get rich quick either get lucky, which you can't count on, or they're selling something to people who want to get rich quick, which means you're the product being sold. The crypto market is still out there, obviously. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are still being traded every day. Some people are still making money, and some people are still losing everything. But I'm not part of that world anymore. These days, I invest in boring index funds and retirement accounts. I have an emergency fund that could cover 6 months of expenses. I live below my means, and I save a little bit every month. It's not exciting. It's not going to make me a millionaire by next year. But it's real, and it's sustainable, and I can sleep at night without worrying about waking up to find out I've lost everything again. I still work at the same tech support company, actually. Same cubicle, same stupid questions from customers, same slow computer that takes forever to load anything. But I don't hate it anymore. It's just a job that pays me real money for real work, money that I can count on being there every 2 weeks. My coworkers don't know about my crypto story. As far as they're concerned, I'm just Jake from tech support who had to move back in with his parents for a while to save money. Which is technically true, I guess. Dave left the company about a year ago. Got a job at some startup, making better money. We still keep in touch occasionally, and he's never once said, "I told you so," about getting out of crypto before the crash. He didn't have to. We both know he was the smart one. So why am I telling you all this? Why am I putting my stupidity and my failures out there for everyone to see? I started reading different kinds of books. Not get-rich-quick cryptocurrency guides, but actual books about personal finance and investing. Books that talked about diversification and risk management and the importance of emergency funds. Boring stuff. The kind of stuff I would have laughed at when I was riding high on my Bitcoin gains. But boring stuff that actually worked. Books that explained why most day traders lose money. Why most people who try to time the market end up worse off than if they'd just bought index funds and held them for decades. Why the people who get rich slowly are the ones who actually stay rich. I started tracking every penny I spent. Not because I was trying to optimize my trading profits, but because I genuinely didn't have money to waste. I learned the difference between needs and wants. I learned how to find satisfaction in small victories, like paying off a credit card or having enough money left over at the end of the month to put $50 into savings. It was humbling. It was boring. It was everything I'd been trying to avoid when I got into cryptocurrency trading. But it was real. It took me almost 3 years to pay off all the debts from my crypto disaster. 3 years of working 2 jobs, living with my parents, and watching every penny I spent. But during those 3 years, I learned more about money and investing than I had in my entire life up to that point. I learned that investing isn't about finding the next big thing. It's about consistently putting money into things that have a track record of growing slowly and steadily over time. I learned that leverage is a weapon that's just as dangerous to the person holding it as it is to anyone else. Maybe more dangerous, because at least your enemies expect you to try to hurt them. I learned that when everyone around you is talking about how easy it is to make money doing something, that's probably the exact moment you should be most suspicious. Recovery was slow, slower than I ever imagined it could be. I had to move back in with my parents, which at my age was probably the most humbling experience of my life. Sleeping in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters and trophies from high school, constant reminders of a time when I thought I had my whole life figured out. Had to get a second job just to pay off the debts I'd accumulated. Nights and weekends at a restaurant, washing dishes and taking out trash, working alongside teenagers who were making the same hourly wage I was. Had to watch my friends moving forward with their lives while I was stuck trying to dig myself out of a hole I created. Friends getting promotions, buying houses, getting married, having kids. Normal life milestones that seemed completely out of reach for me. Every dollar I made went toward paying off debt. The loan from the online company, the money I owed to the cryptocurrency exchange, the money I'd borrowed from my parents, interest and penalties and late fees that made the balances grow even when I was making payments. But somewhere in all that misery, something started to change. I began to realize that the problem wasn't just that I'd lost money. The problem was that I'd completely lost perspective on what money actually meant. I'd started thinking of it as points in a video game instead of the result of real work and real sacrifice. Those cryptocurrency journeys I'd read about online, those Bitcoin success stories that had inspired me to invest in the first place, they all had one thing in common. They made it sound easy, like getting rich was just a matter of being brave enough to take risks. But real wealth, I started to understand, isn't built on courage. It's built on patience, discipline, and making boring, sensible decisions over and over again for years. When I told her the full story, when I explained about the cryptocurrency and the leverage and the loans, I could hear the disappointment in her voice. Not anger, which somehow would have been easier to deal with. Just pure disappointment. My parents helped me out, of course. They always did. But I knew this was money they couldn't really afford to give me. Money they'd been saving for their retirement. Money they'd been putting aside for emergencies. And now their emergency was me. The worst part wasn't even the money, though. Don't get me wrong, being broke sucked. Having to explain to my landlord why I couldn't make rent sucked. Having to ask my parents for help with basic expenses sucked. But the worst part was the shame. All those times I'd acted like I was smarter than everyone else. All those conversations where I'd explained cryptocurrency to people like I was some kind of expert. All those moments where I'd looked down on people for being too conservative with their money. I had to face the fact that I wasn't a brilliant investor. I wasn't even a decent gambler. I was just another sucker who got caught up in the hype and lost everything, because I was too proud and too greedy to know when to quit. Dave, my coworker who'd gotten me into this whole mess in the first place, tried to be supportive. But even he couldn't hide the fact that he'd gotten out months earlier, right before the crash. He'd seen the warning signs that I'd completely missed. "Jake," he said to me one day when I finally dragged myself back to work, "you've got to stop beating yourself up about this. Everyone makes mistakes." But this wasn't just a mistake. This was a complete failure of judgment that had cost me years of progress and put me deeper in debt than I'd ever been in my life. This was the kind of mistake that people never recover from. Or so I thought at the time. I hung up the phone and just sat there on my bed for hours, staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. How had I gone from feeling like a financial genius to owing more money than I made in 3 months? How had everything changed so quickly? You know what's funny about losing everything? It doesn't happen all at once like in the movies. It's more like watching a car accident in slow motion. You see it coming, but you can't seem to do anything to stop it. The first few days after the crash, I kept checking my phone, hoping it was all some kind of mistake. Maybe the market would bounce back tomorrow, or next week, or next month. Maybe this was just another dip that I needed to buy, but I couldn't buy anything. I didn't have any money left to buy with. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls from friends and family. I spent most of my time in bed, either sleeping or staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I'd gotten everything so wrong. The loan payments were still due, of course. The online lending company didn't care that I'd lost the money gambling on cryptocurrency. They wanted their money back, plus interest, plus late fees when I couldn't make the payments on time. My rent was due. My utilities were due. My car insurance was due. All these normal, everyday expenses that had seemed so manageable when I thought I was getting rich, suddenly they felt impossible. I had to call my parents and ask for help. That phone call was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. "Mom, I need to borrow some money." "How much do you need, honey? Is your car broken again?" "No, it's more than that. I made some bad investments and I owe people money and I can't make my rent this month." The silence on the other end of the phone lasted forever. "Jake, what kind of investments? How much money are we talking about?" At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe the app was glitching. Maybe my phone had gotten hacked. This couldn't be real. But as I became more awake, as I started checking different apps and different websites, the reality started sinking in. In one weekend, while I was sleeping, the entire crypto market had collapsed. Not just Bitcoin, but everything. All the altcoins I'd been trading, all the leveraged positions I'd built up, everything was falling apart at once. Some regulatory news had come out of China. Something about banning cryptocurrency mining. The kind of news that normally would cause a small dip, maybe 10 or 15%. But because the market had been so leveraged, so over-leveraged, it triggered this massive cascade of liquidations. When prices started falling, people's leveraged positions got automatically closed out, which forced more selling, which drove prices lower, which triggered more liquidations. It was like dominoes falling, except each domino was someone's life savings. When I finally managed to log into my main trading account and see the damage, I just stared at the screen for about 10 minutes straight. The numbers didn't make sense at first. They couldn't be right. I'd lost everything. Not just my original $3,000, but the loan money too. And because of the leverage, because of all those borrowed funds I'd been using to amplify my trades, I actually owed money to the exchange. My account balance was negative. Negative. I was in debt for the first time in my adult life, and I had absolutely nothing to show for it. I called the customer service number for the exchange, thinking maybe this was some kind of error that they could fix. Maybe there was some protection for users, some insurance, something. The guy on the phone was polite but firm. The trades were legitimate. The liquidations were automatic and unavoidable. I owed them $12,000. $12,000 that I didn't have. There was this one group that charged $500 a month for access to their premium trading alerts. $500. 6 months earlier, that would have been a huge chunk of my savings. But now it was just the cost of doing business, an investment in my education. The group had this private Discord channel where members would share their wins and losses. Seeing other people making 5 figures in a single day became normal. Expected, even. Every win felt like proof that I was destined for this. Every loss felt like a temporary setback that would be erased by the next big win. I remember one night, I was up until 4 in the morning trading some new cryptocurrency that had launched that week. I'd put $10,000 into it, and I was watching the price fluctuate minute by minute. Up 500, down 800, up 1,200, down 300. My heart was racing the entire time, not from fear, but from excitement. This was better than any drug, any video game, any form of entertainment I'd ever experienced. The rush of watching numbers go up and down, knowing that each movement meant real money in my pocket. When I finally went to bed that night, I'd made about $3,000. $3,000 for staying up late and clicking buttons on my computer. At my day job, it would have taken me almost a month to earn that much after taxes. I started thinking maybe I should quit my job. Why waste 8 hours a day in that cubicle when I could be home, trading, making real money? But the truth is, I wasn't investing anymore. I was gambling. And like most gambling addicts, I was about to learn that the house always wins in the end. I just didn't know it yet. The second major crash happened on a Sunday morning. I woke up to notifications on my phone that I'll never forget. Emergency alerts from my trading apps. Margin call warnings. Messages saying my positions were being automatically closed to prevent further losses. And you know what? It worked. For a few weeks, anyway. Bitcoin bounced back, and my investment was worth more than it had ever been before. I felt vindicated, proud of myself for having the courage to buy when everyone else was selling. This was what separated successful investors from the scared masses, I thought. This was proof that I really did understand this market better than most people. Man, I really believed I had it all figured out. The loan payment was only like $250 a month. Easy money when I was making thousands every week just by holding cryptocurrency. I could pay that off in no time and still have plenty left over for everything else I wanted to do. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Nothing ever is. By this point, I wasn't even the same person anymore. I'd started dressing differently, talking differently. I was that guy at parties who couldn't stop talking about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. I was the guy giving financial advice to people who never asked for it. I had about $40,000 worth of cryptocurrency, but with leverage, I was controlling positions worth over $100,000. I felt rich. Not just regular rich, but smart rich. Like I'd cracked some secret code that other people were too lazy or too scared to learn. My apartment was still the same crappy studio, but I'd started shopping differently. Instead of buying the cheapest groceries I could find, I was getting name brand stuff. Instead of splitting appetizers with friends, I was picking up the check. Instead of walking everywhere to save money on gas, I was taking Ubers. It felt good to be generous. It felt good to not have to worry about money for the first time in my adult life. I started taking bigger risks, trading smaller cryptocurrencies that had bigger potential gains, following tips from crypto influencers on social media, joining paid groups where experts shared their trading signals. Bitcoin had crashed overnight. Not completely, but enough to wipe out about 30% of my gains. In one night, while I was sleeping peacefully in my bed, dreaming about financial freedom, I'd lost more money than most people make in a month. My first reaction wasn't fear or panic. It was anger. I was pissed off. How dare the market do this to me? How dare these weak-handed sellers crash the price right when I was building real wealth? I went to the bathroom and called Dave. Dude, are you seeing this? What the hell is happening? Dave sounded calm, which somehow made me even more angry. Yeah, I saw it. It's just a correction, man. These things happen. The market can't go up forever without taking a breather. A breather? I just lost $8,000. You didn't lose anything unless you sell. This is temporary. Just hold on, it'll come back. But here's the crazy part. Instead of being scared, instead of taking Dave's advice to just wait it out, I was angry. Angry at the market, angry at the news articles that were causing the crash, angry at people for selling when they should have been buying. This was just a dip, I told myself. A correction. These things happen in the crypto market all the time. Smart investors buy the dip. This was my chance to buy more Bitcoin at a discount. All those YouTube videos I'd watched talked about this exact scenario. Don't panic, sell. Buy the dip. Diamond hands. The people who get rich are the ones who stay calm when everyone else is losing their minds. So that's exactly what I did. I took out a loan. $5,000 from one of those online lending companies. The kind with the commercials that promise easy approval and quick cash. I barely read the terms, barely looked at the interest rate. All I cared about was getting that money into my trading account as quickly as possible. Added it to my crypto portfolio and bought more Bitcoin while the prices were low. And for a while, it was working. The crypto market was having one of those runs where everything just keeps going up. Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the major cryptocurrencies were climbing higher and higher. Every morning I'd wake up to see my account balance had grown overnight, sometimes by hundreds of dollars, sometimes by more than 1,000. I quit checking my account obsessively because I knew it was just going to be good news every time. I started making plans, real plans. I was going to pay off my student loans, which were this constant weight on my shoulders, taking $300 out of every paycheck. I was going to buy a car, something reliable that wouldn't break down every few months and leave me stranded. Maybe even put a down payment on a house. I remember calling my mom and telling her I'd figured out this investment thing. She was worried, of course. Kept asking me if I was being careful, if I knew what I was doing, if I was sure this wasn't some kind of scam. And I just laughed it off. Mom, I've made more money in the last 3 months than I made all last year. I know what I'm doing. This is the future. You should probably get into this too, actually. God, I was such an idiot. But at the time, I felt like a genius. I felt like I'd discovered fire while everyone else was still rubbing sticks together in the dark. The first crack in my perfect crypto story happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I was at work, sitting through this mind-numbing meeting about new customer service protocols, and I decided to check my phone during a break. Just a quick look, see how much richer I'd gotten overnight. But instead of green numbers, I saw red. Not just a little red. Deep, angry red. The kind of red that makes your stomach drop and your hands shake and your mouth go dry all at the same time. I'd sit in my cubicle, pretending to work on support tickets, but really I was checking prices and reading crypto forums. My productivity at work started slipping, but I didn't care. Why should I care about helping some random customer fix their email when I was on track to become a millionaire? That's when I started learning about leverage. And that's when everything really started going wrong. Now, if you don't know what leverage is in crypto trading, let me explain it real quick. Basically, it's like borrowing money to buy more cryptocurrency than you can actually afford. The exchange lets you borrow against your existing investment, so you can make bigger trades and bigger profits. Sounds pretty good, right? If Bitcoin goes up, you make way more money than you normally would. But here's the thing nobody really emphasizes when they're explaining this stuff. Or maybe they do emphasize it, but you're too excited about the potential profits to really listen. If Bitcoin goes down, you lose way more money than you normally would too. But I wasn't thinking about that part. I was too busy dreaming about becoming a crypto millionaire. The way they explained it made it sound almost foolish not to use leverage. Why settle for small gains when you could multiply your profits? Why be conservative when you could be aggressive and really build wealth quickly? I remember watching this YouTube video where this trader guy was explaining how he'd turned $5,000 into $50,000 in just 3 months using leverage. He made it sound like basic math. Like anyone who understood simple multiplication could do the same thing. So I started using leverage. Just a little bit at first. Instead of trading with my $6,000, I was effectively trading with $12,000. The platform made it so easy. Just click a button, adjust a slider, and boom, you're controlling twice as much money. Then 18,000, then 24,000. Dave and I started talking more at work. He introduced me to other people who were into crypto trading. Suddenly, I had this whole new group of friends, and we'd spend hours talking about market trends, Bitcoin crashes, price predictions. We'd meet up after work at this coffee shop downtown, laptops out, charts on our screens, talking like we were Wall Street executives instead of tech support guys and customer service reps. It felt like being part of some exclusive club that regular people just didn't understand. Like we were the smart ones who saw the future coming while everyone else was stuck in the past, still trusting banks and traditional investments. I started reading different news websites. Not just regular news, but crypto news, Bitcoin news. I learned words like HODL and diamond hands, and to the moon. I started understanding what it meant when people talked about support levels and resistance levels and market sentiment. But here's where things started getting weird, and I should have paid attention to this warning sign. The more money I made, the more I wanted to make. That 4,000 turned into 5,000, then 6,000. And I'm thinking to myself, if I can make this much with $3,000, imagine what I could do with 10,000 or 20,000. I started doing math in my head constantly. If Bitcoin doubles again, I'll have 12,000. If it triples, I'll have 18,000. If it goes up 10 times like some of these experts are predicting, I'll have $60,000. 60,000. That's more than I make in a year. I began looking at my job differently. Instead of seeing it as my source of income, I started seeing it as this annoying thing that was keeping me from focusing on my real career, which was cryptocurrency trading. One night, I stayed up until 3 in the morning reading about market analysis and trading strategies. My eyes were burning, my back was killing me from hunching over my laptop, but I couldn't stop. I felt like I was on the verge of discovering something huge, something that would change my life forever. So I jumped. I took that $3,000, every penny I had saved up, and I bought Bitcoin. My first cryptocurrency journey had officially begun. And man, let me tell you, clicking that buy button felt like the most important decision I'd ever made in my life. And man, for a while there, it felt like I'd made the smartest decision of my life. Within 2 weeks, my 3,000 had turned into 4,000. Just like that. A $1,000 profit for basically doing nothing except clicking a few buttons on my phone app and waiting. I remember the first time I saw that green number on my screen. For $1,000. I literally stared at it for like 5 minutes, refreshing the app over and over again to make sure it wasn't some kind of glitch. But nope, it was real. I'd made more money in 2 weeks than I usually made in a month at my job. That feeling, man, it's hard to describe. It was like winning the lottery, except I felt like I'd won it through skill instead of luck. Like I'd cracked some secret code that most people were too scared or too dumb to figure out. I remember checking my crypto wallet app obsessively. First thing in the morning, still lying in bed, squinting at my phone screen. During my lunch break, hiding in the bathroom stall so my boss wouldn't see me on my phone. Before bed, right after I brushed my teeth. Green numbers everywhere. My Bitcoin investment was growing, and I felt like I was finally winning at something. My laptop was this old piece of junk that took forever to load anything, but I didn't care. I was glued to that screen, watching video after video of people explaining how cryptocurrency worked, how Bitcoin was the future of money, how regular people were becoming millionaires just by buying and holding digital coins. And the more I learned, the more excited I got. These weren't just numbers on a screen. These were stories. Real people making real money. Crypto millionaires who started with nothing and ended up with everything. Bitcoin stories that sounded like fairy tales, except they were actually happening. I read about this guy who bought Bitcoin back in 2010 for like $50, and now he's worth millions. Millions. From $50. There was this other story about a college student who put his student loan money into Bitcoin and paid off his entire education, plus bought a house. A house. With student loan money. I started thinking, what if Bitcoin rises again? What if this is my chance? What if I'm looking at the opportunity of a lifetime and I'm too scared to take it? You know what I mean? It felt like standing at the edge of a diving board, looking down at water that could either be perfectly safe or filled with sharks. But everyone around the pool is telling you the water's fine. Jump in, you'll love it. The more research I did, the more convinced I became that I was smart enough to figure this out. I mean, I work in tech support, right? I understand computers. I can learn this stuff. These other people making money, they're not special. They just got in early and had the guts to take action. I started following crypto influencers on social media. These guys with fancy cars and expensive watches, posting screenshots of their trading accounts showing thousands of dollars in profits. They made it look so easy. Buy low, sell high. Follow the trends. Trust the technology. That's when I first heard about Bitcoin. Now, I'd heard the word before, sure, but I never really paid attention to it. Cryptocurrency? Sounded like some nerdy computer thing that only tech bros with too much time and too much money cared about. I figured it was probably some complicated scam that I'd never understand anyway. But then my coworker Dave started talking about it during lunch breaks. Dave was this quiet guy who usually kept to himself. The kind of person who brought the same turkey sandwich every single day and ate it while reading articles on his phone. Never bothered anyone, never caused any drama. Just showed up, did his work, went home. But suddenly, he's coming to work in new clothes. Not fancy clothes, but new clothes. Clean sneakers instead of the beat-up ones he'd been wearing for months. A nice watch. Started eating lunch at the deli across the street instead of bringing sandwiches from home. And he kept talking about his Bitcoin investment like it was the best thing since sliced bread. Said he'd made more money in 6 months than he'd made in 2 years at our job. I remember sitting there, eating my sad sandwich that I'd made with the cheapest bread and lunch meat I could find at the grocery store, thinking to myself, man, if Dave can figure this out, how hard can it really be? That thought right there, that was my first mistake. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that Dave, who I'd always thought was just as stuck as I was, suddenly seemed to have found a way out. And I wanted to know what that way was. So I went home that night and started researching. YouTube videos, Reddit forums, cryptocurrency websites. I spent hours, man. Hours just soaking up all this information about blockchain technology, Bitcoin trading, the crypto market. You know what's crazy? I used to think I was smart. Really smart. Like, smarter than everyone else around me. Man, was I wrong about that. My name's Jake, and I'm about to tell you the most expensive lesson of my life. A lesson that cost me everything I had, everything I thought I'd ever have, and damn near cost me my sanity too. But here's the thing. I need to tell this story. Not because I'm proud of it, hell no. But because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs to hear this before they make the same stupid mistakes I did. So buckle up. This isn't gonna be pretty. Back in 2019, I was just another guy working a dead-end job at a tech support company. You know the type, right? Sitting in a cubicle, answering the same stupid questions day after day, watching the clock like it was moving backwards. Susan from accounting asking me for the 5th time how to reset her password. Bill from sales complaining about his computer being slow when he's got 40 browser tabs open watching YouTube videos. I was making about 42 grand a year. Not terrible, but not great either. Living paycheck to paycheck, like most people my age. Had about $3,000 saved up in my checking account, and I thought I was doing pretty well for myself. I mean, $3,000 felt like a fortune to me back then. I could probably live for 2 months on that if I really had to. My apartment was this tiny studio in a not-so-great part of town. You know the kind. Thin walls where you can hear your neighbors fighting at 2 in the morning. A refrigerator that makes weird noises and a shower that only gives you hot water if you stand in exactly the right spot and pray to whatever gods control apartment plumbing. But I was content, you know? I had my routine. Work, home, Netflix, sleep. Weekends hanging out with friends, maybe going to a bar, splitting appetizers because none of us could afford our own meals. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine.